The champagne flute shattered against Italian marble, and Harrison Blackwell didn't flinch. He stood alone in the empty ballroom of the Belmont Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, surrounded by 200 white roses that would never be photographed, and a 3-tier cake that no one would taste. The afternoon sun cut through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the space where his future was supposed to begin. Instead, it looked like a mausoleum for hope. But before we step deeper into this memory, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys. Harrison was 34 years old and had built an empire before most men figured out how to build a career. Blackwell Industries stretched across tech development, sustainable energy, and commercial real estate. His face had graced the cover of Forbes twice. He knew how to negotiate billion-dollar mergers, how to read a balance sheet in 3 languages, how to command a boardroom with nothing but silence. But he had never learned how to read the woman who left him standing at an altar with 500 guests and a minister who kept clearing his throat. Victoria Ashworth. The name still tasted like copper in his mouth. She had been perfect on paper. Old Charleston money, a degree from Vanderbilt, connections that opened doors even his wealth couldn't unlock. Their engagement had been a strategic alliance dressed up in Tiffany diamonds and carefully orchestrated charity galas. He'd convinced himself that respect and compatibility were enough, that love was a luxury, not a necessity. He'd been wrong. The note she left was brief, elegant, devastating. I can't marry someone who doesn't know how to feel. 6 months later, Harrison had relocated to Denver, Colorado, far from Charleston's whispered gossip and pitying glances. He bought a modernist house in Cherry Creek with walls made of glass and steel, a monument to control and precision. Everything in his life had sharp edges now. He preferred it that way. Edges didn't surprise you. They didn't leave. His days followed a rigid pattern. Up at 5, gym by 5:30, office by 7. He worked until the city lights blurred into a single ribbon of gold below his corner office on the 32nd floor. Then he went home to his empty house and poured exactly 2 fingers of scotch, which he rarely finished. His assistant, Margaret, had been with him for 12 years and knew better than to mention his personal life. His CFO, Richard, stopped inviting him to dinners. His younger sister, Penelope, called every Sunday and pretended not to notice that he never really answered her questions. Harrison told himself he was fine. He was excellent at lying to himself. It was a Tuesday in October when everything shifted, though he didn't recognize it at the time. Margaret appeared in his office doorway with an expression he'd never seen before, something close to defiance. "Your house manager quit," she said without preamble. Harrison glanced up from his laptop. "Then hire another one." "I've tried. You've gone through 6 in 4 months, Harrison. Word gets around." He frowned. "I'm not difficult to work for." Margaret's silence was eloquent. "Fine. What do you suggest?" "There's a woman, Claire Dawson. She runs a small housekeeping business, mostly modest homes, nothing like yours. But she's different. Comes highly recommended for being thorough and discreet." "Then hire her." "She turned us down." Harrison looked up fully now, genuinely surprised. People didn't turn him down. Why? She said she wasn't interested in working for emotionally unavailable rich men who treat staff like furniture. For the first time in months, Harrison almost smiled. Almost. "Set up a meeting," he said. "I'll convince her myself." Margaret raised an eyebrow, but nodded. As she turned to leave, Harrison caught his reflection in the window. A man in a $4,000 suit, surrounded by success, absolutely alone. He wondered, briefly, if Claire Dawson could see ghosts, because he was starting to suspect he'd become one. Claire Dawson arrived at the Blackwell residence on a Thursday morning with a bucket of cleaning supplies, a thermos of coffee she'd brewed herself, and zero expectations. She'd taken the job only because her brother's medical bills had piled up faster than her pride could keep pace with, and Margaret had offered her triple her usual rate for a 3-month trial. 3 months. She could survive anything for 3 months. The house looked like something from an architecture magazine, all clean lines and expensive emptiness. No photographs on the walls, no books left open on tables, no signs that anyone actually lived here. Claire had cleaned plenty of wealthy homes, but this was different. This wasn't wealth. This was a fortress. Harrison Blackwell was waiting in the kitchen when she arrived, which surprised her. Most clients made themselves scarce during cleaning hours. He stood by the window with a cup of coffee, dressed in charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He was handsome in that sharp, severe way. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, strong jaw, eyes the color of winter storms. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to sleep. "Miss Dawson," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Thank you for reconsidering." "I didn't reconsider," Claire replied, setting down her supplies. "I negotiated." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Margaret mentioned you have specific requirements," he said. "No interference with your process, payment on completion, direct communication only." "That's right. Unusual terms. Unusual situation. You've gone through 6 house managers in 4 months. That's not a staffing problem, Mr. Blackwell. That's a you problem." She watched him carefully, waiting for the offense, the dismissal. Instead, he studied her with those storm gray eyes, and she felt something unexpected. Recognition. Like he was seeing an actual person instead of just hired help. "Fair enough," he said quietly. "What else do you need to know? Why do they keep leaving?" He was silent for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in slow circles. "I'm told I'm difficult." "Difficult how?" "Exacting, cold, unavailable." He met her gaze directly. "Apparently, I treat people like furniture." Claire recognized the words she'd said to Margaret, and despite herself, she felt a flicker of respect. A man who could quote his own criticism without deflection was rarer than she'd expected. "Well," she said, pulling her hair into a practical ponytail, "I'm not furniture, and I'm not here to fix whatever's broken in you. I'm here to clean your house and get paid. We clear?" "Crystal." "Good. Then stay out of my way." She expected him to leave, to retreat to wherever wealthy men disappeared to during the day. Instead, Harrison Blackwell did something that surprised them both. He stayed. The first week passed in careful orbits. Claire arrived at 7 each morning and moved through the house like a careful cartographer, mapping its emptiness. She dusted shelves that held nothing, vacuumed rooms that no one entered, washed windows that framed a view no one looked at. The house was immaculate because it was unlived in. Her job wasn't cleaning. It was maintaining a beautiful lie. Harrison kept his distance, but she felt his presence. The sound of his voice during conference calls in his home office, the faint smell of his coffee, the way certain rooms felt warmer after he'd passed through them. He worked constantly, she noticed. Evenings, weekends, early mornings. She wondered if he knew how to stop. On her 6th day, she found him in the kitchen at 2 p.m, staring at an open laptop with the expression of a man trying to solve an impossible equation. "You eat lunch?" she asked, more out of curiosity than concern. He glanced up, startled, as if he'd forgotten she was there. "Usually." "That doesn't sound convincing." Harrison rubbed his eyes. "I had coffee." "Coffee isn't food." "It is if you're efficient." Claire shook her head and opened his refrigerator, a pristine, mostly empty space with bottled water, expensive cheese she doubted he'd touched, and various takeout containers in different stages of abandonment. She pulled out eggs, butter, and some wilted spinach that was barely salvageable. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Making you an omelet. You're paying me to maintain this house, and a dead CEO doesn't need housekeeping." She expected protest. Instead, he closed his laptop and watched her work with an intensity that made her hands less steady than she'd like. She cooked the way she did everything, efficiently, without flourish, and slid the plate in front of him 3 minutes later. "You don't have to," he began. "I know." He picked up his fork slowly, took a bite, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite pleasure, but something close to memory. "My mother used to make eggs like this," he said quietly, "before she got sick." Claire leaned against the counter, maintaining distance. "How long ago?" 15 years. Cancer." "I'm sorry." He nodded, taking another bite. They fell into silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood that some things didn't need words. When he finished, Harrison looked at her with those storm-gray eyes and said, "Thank you, Claire." It was the first time he'd used her first name. It shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. October bled into November, and something unspoken shifted between them. Harrison stopped hiding in his office during her hours. Sometimes he worked at the kitchen island while she cleaned, his presence a quiet constant. Other times she'd find him standing by the windows, lost in thoughts he didn't share. She learned him in small increments. He took his coffee black, hated talking on the phone but excelled at it, and had a sister named Penelope who called every Sunday at noon. He never looked happy during those calls, but he never missed them either. He kept no photographs, but there was a drawer in his study filled with fountain pens he never used. Each one expensive, each one a gift, each one carefully preserved. Claire didn't ask about the wedding that never happened, but she saw evidence of it everywhere. In the way he flinched when romantic comedies played on the television she'd turned on while cleaning. In the tightness around his eyes whenever Margaret mentioned social events. In the careful way he avoided the entire east wing of the house, where she'd found a closet still full of women's clothing with the tags still attached. She donated all of it without asking permission. He never mentioned it, but the next week her paycheck included a bonus that made her throat tight. They developed rhythms without discussing them. Claire started arriving earlier, making coffee for both of them. Harrison began leaving books on the counter, novels he thought she might like, based on nothing but intuition. She read every one, and left them back with small notes tucked inside. The ending surprised me, or Chapter 7 made me cry, or simply, "Thank you." He kept the notes in his desk drawer, though she wasn't supposed to know that. One afternoon, Claire was cleaning the home office when she found him staring at his laptop screen, with an expression of pure exhaustion. The light from the window carved shadows under his eyes, and she realized he looked thinner than when they'd first met. "When did you last sleep?" she asked. "I sleep." "That's not what I asked." Harrison leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. "There's a merger. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated." He laughed, sharp and bitter. Victoria used to say that too. The name landed between them like a stone in still water. Claire had heard the whispers. Margaret wasn't as discreet as she thought, but Harrison had never spoken about her directly. "The woman who left you at the altar," Claire said quietly. It wasn't a question. Harrison's jaw tightened. "Margaret talks too much. Margaret cares about you. Margaret should mind her own business." Claire set down her cleaning cloth and sat in the chair across from his desk, a breach of the unspoken boundaries they'd maintained. "You want to tell me what happened?" "No." "Want to tell me anyway?" He studied her for a long moment, and she watched him wage some internal war. Finally, he exhaled slowly and looked out the window at the Denver skyline. Victoria was appropriate, smart, connected, beautiful. Our families approved. The business synergies made sense. I thought that was enough. His voice was flat, clinical. I thought love was something that grew from respect and compatibility, that feelings were optional. What changed? She did. Or maybe she finally saw me clearly. Harrison's fingers drummed against his desk. 3 days before the wedding, she told me she'd met someone else, a middle school teacher, made $40,000 a year, drove a 10-year-old Honda. And she looked at me with these eyes full of pity and said she'd rather have a small life with someone who knew how to feel than a big life with someone who didn't. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. That must have destroyed you. It should have. Harrison met her gaze, and the raw honesty in his expression stole her breath. But the worst part? She was right. I stood there in my $12,000 tuxedo, and I couldn't tell her I loved her. Because I didn't. I respected her. I admired her. But I didn't love her. And she knew it long before I did. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truth. "So you came to Denver," Claire said softly. "So I came to Denver, built this perfect empty house, convinced myself that if I controlled everything, my schedule, my space, my emotions, I'd never be vulnerable again." He laughed without humor. "How's that working out?" Claire stood, moving to the window beside him. The city sprawled below, all glass and ambition. "You're not as cold as you think you are. You don't know me, Claire. I know you keep the notes I leave in books. I know you donated your mother's recipe box to Penelope but kept one card, the one for eggs. I know you work yourself to exhaustion because stopping means thinking, and thinking means feeling." She turned to face him. "And I know you're terrified that if you let yourself feel again, it'll break you." Harrison stared at her, his storm gray eyes wide with something between shock and recognition. "How do you—" "Because I do the same thing." The admission escaped before she could stop it. "My ex-husband left me with nothing but debt and a brother who needed medical care I couldn't afford. So I built walls, I made rules, I controlled what I could control." She swallowed hard. "And I told myself it was enough." "Is it?" The question hung in the air between them, charged with everything they weren't saying. "No," Claire whispered. "It's not." Harrison stood slowly, moving closer until she could count his heartbeats and the pulse at his throat. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching, asking permission for something neither of them was ready to name. "Claire," he said, her name rough with longing. "This isn't... We shouldn't... I know." But neither of them moved away. The moment stretched, taut as a wire, until the sound of Harrison's phone shattered it. He jerked back, answering with a clipped Blackwell that belonged to the CEO, not the man who'd almost touched her face. Claire left the room on shaking legs, her heart hammering against her ribs. She cleaned the rest of the house on autopilot, her mind replaying the almost touch, the confession, the way he'd looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years. When she left that evening, Harrison was still on the phone, but his eyes followed her to the door. She felt the weight of his gaze all the way home, a physical thing she couldn't shake. That night, lying in her small apartment, Claire admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling for Harrison Blackwell. Not the CEO, not the fortune. The man beneath the armor, broken, lonely, and trying so hard to convince himself he didn't need anyone. She was falling, and there was no safe way to land. Thanksgiving arrived with an invitation Claire didn't want. Harrison's sister Penelope was hosting dinner and had somehow convinced him to attend and to bring a guest. Margaret had suggested Claire, arguing it would be good for appearances, and Harrison had asked with a hesitance that made refusing impossible. "You don't have to," he'd said, "but Penelope will ask questions if I show up alone again, and I'm not ready to. I'd appreciate the buffer." So Claire found herself in a dress she'd bought 2 years ago and barely worn, sitting in Harrison's Tesla as they drove to a sprawling Tudor home in Highlands Ranch. He was quiet, one hand on the steering wheel, the other drumming a nervous rhythm on his thigh. "Tell me about your sister," Claire said, breaking the silence. Harrison's expression softened. "Penelope is light. Everything I'm not. She's a pediatric surgeon, married to a genuinely good man, has 2 kids who think I'm the boring uncle who brings expensive presents and doesn't know how to play. Are they right?" "Completely." Claire smiled despite herself. "What should I know before we walk in there?" Penelope will ask intrusive questions and pretend she's not. Her husband, David, will try to talk business until she kicks him under the table. The kids will show you every toy they own. And everyone will be aggressively cheerful because they're worried about me. Are they right to worry? Harrison glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. They used to be. The weight of that statement settled between them as they pulled into the driveway. Before Claire could respond, the front door burst open and 2 small children came running out, followed by a woman with Harrison's eyes and a smile that could light cities. "Harrison!" Penelope wrapped her brother in a hug that he returned with surprising gentleness. Then she turned to Claire with frank curiosity. "And you must be Claire. Margaret has told me absolutely nothing about you, which means you're either incredibly boring or incredibly interesting. I'm betting on interesting." "Penelope," Harrison said, a warning in his tone. "I'm just saying hello." She looped her arm through Claire's with easy warmth. "Come inside. David's attempting to cook, which means we'll probably end up ordering pizza, but the wine is excellent." The house was everything Harrison's wasn't. Warm, cluttered, alive with the beautiful chaos of family. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator. Photographs lined the hallway. A dog named Murphy greeted them with enthusiastic tail wagging. Claire watched Harrison navigate this world like a man underwater, present but not quite participating. During dinner, Penelope conducted what she probably thought was a subtle interrogation. "So Claire, how did you end up working for my brother?" "Your brother needed someone who wouldn't quit. And you're that stubborn?" "Apparently." Penelope grinned. "I like you. Harrison, why haven't you brought her around before?" "Because you're exactly like this," Harrison said, but there was affection beneath the exasperation. The meal continued with easy conversation, but Claire felt Harrison retreating with each passing moment. He answered questions, smiled at appropriate times, but his eyes had that distant quality she'd learned to recognize. The look of a man escaping into his head because the present hurt too much. After dinner, while Penelope was putting the kids to bed and David was clearing dishes, Claire found Harrison standing alone on the back patio, staring at the November stars. "You okay?" she asked quietly. This was Victoria's favorite holiday. His voice was rough. She used to say Thanksgiving was about gratitude, and gratitude was the antidote to ambition. She thought I needed that reminder. Claire stepped beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. "Did you love her at all?" "I thought I did. But now I think I love the idea of her. The future she represented. The person I thought I was supposed to be." He turned to face Claire, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. "I was engaged for 8 months and never once felt what I feel when you walk into a room." The confession hung in the cold air between them, dangerous and true. "Harrison, I know. You work for me. It's inappropriate. It's complicated." His jaw tightened. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't wait for you every morning, that I don't listen for your footsteps. That I don't read the notes you leave in books like they're letters meant just for me. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. This is a terrible idea. I know. I have rules, boundaries. I don't get involved with clients. I know. And you're still... She gestured helplessly. You're still healing from someone who left you at an altar. You're not ready for this. Probably not. Harrison stepped closer, and she could see her reflection in his eyes. But I'm tired of being careful, tired of being safe. Victoria was right about one thing. I don't know how to feel. But Claire, when I'm with you, I remember what feeling used to be like. And it terrifies me. But not as much as the thought of you walking away. She should have stepped back. Should have maintained the distance that protected them both. Instead, Claire reached up and touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw, the warmth of his skin, the slight tremor that ran through him at her touch. I'm not walking away, she whispered. But I need you to be sure, because I've been broken before, Harrison, and I won't survive it again. I'm not him. Harrison's hand covered hers, pressing it against his cheek. Whoever hurt you, whoever left you, I'm not him. How do I know that? You don't, but I'll spend every day proving it if you'll let me. The back door opened, and Penelope's voice called out, Everything okay out here? They stepped apart quickly, the spell broken, but not forgotten. Harrison cleared his throat. Fine. Just getting some air. But when Penelope looked at them, her knowing smile said she wasn't fooled for a moment. The drive home was quiet, charged with everything unsaid. When Harrison pulled up to Claire's apartment building, he turned off the engine and sat in silence for a long moment. I meant what I said, he finally spoke. I know. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. But Claire, I need you to know that this isn't just... You're not just... I know, she said again, softer this time. She got out of the car before she could do something foolish, like kiss him or cry or both. But as she reached her door, she heard him call her name. She turned to find him standing by the car, hands in his pockets, looking younger and more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Thank you, he said. For tonight. For everything. Claire nodded, not trusting her voice, and disappeared inside. She leaned against her closed door, breathing hard, her hand pressed against her racing heart. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. I don't know how to do this, but I want to learn. She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Then we'll figure it out together. It was a promise and a risk. And as she lay in bed that night, Claire wondered if she was brave enough to keep it. Because loving Harrison Blackwell meant loving someone who'd forgotten how to be loved. It meant patience and faith and the terrifying possibility that even her best might not be enough. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the way he'd looked at her on that patio. Raw, honest, desperately hopeful. And Claire Dawson had never been very good at walking away from things worth fighting for. The week after Thanksgiving, everything changed, and nothing did. Claire still arrived at 7 each morning. Harrison still worked from home more often than necessary. But now there were touches, accidental brushes of hands when passing coffee cups, his fingers lingering on her shoulder when he said good morning, the way they gravitated toward each other like magnets, with no choice in the matter. They didn't talk about what was happening. They just let it happen. On a Tuesday morning, Claire arrived to find Harrison in the kitchen, not working but cooking, or attempting to. The counter was covered in flour, and something in a pan was smoking. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying not to laugh. "Making breakfast." He gestured at the disaster around him. "I thought, you always make me food. I wanted to return the favor." Claire's heart did something complicated in her chest. That's... Harrison, you don't have to... I want to. He looked at her with such earnest vulnerability that she had to look away. I want to be the kind of man who knows how to do ordinary things. Who can make breakfast for someone without calling a private chef? She moved beside him, taking the spatula from his hand. Okay, then let me teach you. For the next hour, Claire guided Harrison through making a simple omelet, her hands over his, correcting his technique, laughing when he added too much salt, feeling the warmth of him at her back. It was domestic and intimate, and absolutely terrifying in its normalcy. When they finally sat down to eat the slightly imperfect results, Harrison looked at her across the table and said, "Tell me about your brother." Claire stiffened. She'd mentioned Daniel only once, in passing. "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you want to tell me." She set down her fork, studying him carefully. "Why?" "Because you know everything about me. My failed engagement, my emotional unavailability, my sister's kids' names. But I don't know why you work 3 jobs. I don't know why you never talk about your family. I don't know what made you build walls as high as mine." The honesty in his voice made refusing impossible. "Daniel is my younger brother. He's 26, and he has multiple sclerosis." Claire's voice was steady, practiced. "He was diagnosed 5 years ago, right after my divorce. His medication costs more than most people make in a year, and insurance barely covers half. So I work, and I save, and I keep him alive." Harrison's expression shifted into something painful to witness. Not pity, but understanding. "Your ex-husband? Left the moment things got hard, took our savings and disappeared. I found out later he'd been having an affair with a woman from his office. Someone without complicated family situations or medical bills or any of the messy reality that comes with actual life." She laughed bitterly. "Apparently I was too much work. He was a coward. He was honest. Some people aren't built for hard things." Harrison reached across the table and took her hand. "You are." The simple statement, delivered with such certainty, broke something loose in Claire's chest. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on most days." That's what strength is. Holding on when letting go would be easier. They sat in silence, hands clasped, the morning light turning everything golden. Claire felt tears building but refused to let them fall. She'd learned long ago that crying solved nothing. "Can I meet him?" Harrison asked quietly. "Daniel?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he's important to you, which makes him important to me." Claire stared at him, searching for the angle, the manipulation, the inevitable disappointment. But Harrison's eyes held only sincerity and something that looked dangerously like love. "He's in a care facility in Aurora," she said slowly. "I visit him every Saturday afternoon. Then I'll drive you this weekend." If that's okay. It wasn't okay. It was terrifying. Bringing Harrison into that part of her life meant admitting this was real, meant risking the one pure thing she had left, her brother's trust, his peace, his small protected world. But when she looked at Harrison, she saw a man trying so hard to be different, to be better, to prove he was capable of showing up for the hard things. "Okay," she whispered. "Saturday." The relief on his face made her heart ache. That Saturday, Harrison picked her up in his Tesla, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater that made him look almost ordinary. Almost. They drove to Aurora mostly in silence, but it was comfortable. The silence of 2 people who didn't need words to communicate. The care facility was clean but institutional, with fluorescent lights and the sharp smell of antiseptic. Claire had been coming here every week for 3 years, but bringing Harrison made her see it through new eyes. The tired staff, the worn furniture, the window that looked out onto nothing but a parking lot. Daniel was in the common room, reading in his wheelchair. He'd lost weight since her last visit, and Claire felt the familiar guilt rage twist in her stomach. Her brother looked up when they entered, and his face split into a genuine smile. "Claire Bear," he said, using the childhood nickname that always made her throat tight. "Hey, Danny." She kissed his forehead and gestured to Harrison. "This is Harrison. Harrison, my brother Daniel." Daniel studied Harrison with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The Ice King himself. Claire said you were a pain in the ass." "Daniel." Claire felt her face flush, but Harrison laughed, genuinely laughed. "She's not wrong. You treating my sister right?" "I'm trying to." "That's not an answer." Harrison met Daniel's gaze steadily. "No, but it's the truth. I'm trying, and I'll keep trying as long as she lets me." Something passed between them, some masculine understanding that Claire wasn't privy to. Daniel nodded slowly. "Good enough. Sit down. Tell me if my sister's being as stubborn with you as she is with me." For the next 2 hours, Claire watched Harrison talk with her brother about books, about Denver, about meaningless things and meaningful ones. He didn't talk down to Daniel, didn't treat him with pity or awkward courtesy. He just talked, like Daniel was a person, not a diagnosis. When Daniel got tired, Harrison excused himself to give them privacy. Claire helped her brother back to his room, tucking him in the way she had when they were children. "I like him," Daniel said quietly. "Yeah?" "He looks at you the way people should, like you're the whole world, not just part of it." Daniel caught her hand. "But Claire, be careful. You've been hurt before." "I know." "No, you don't." Her brother's grip tightened. "You think you do, but you don't know how to let someone in anymore. You're so busy protecting me that you forgot to protect yourself. Or maybe you forgot you're worth protecting." Tears finally spilled over. "Danny, let him in, Claire, all the way in. Because that man out there, he's not going to run, I can tell. But he needs you to trust him first. Can you do that?" She wiped her eyes, nodding even though she wasn't sure. "I can try. That's my girl." In the car on the way back, Harrison drove in silence until they were halfway home. Then he pulled over at a scenic overlook, turning off the engine. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me meet Daniel." "Thank you for coming." "Claire, I need to tell you something." Harrison turned to face her, and the intensity in his expression made her breath catch. "I've spent 6 months convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That needing people meant weakness. That love was just another liability in a world that required control." He reached over and took her hand. "But then you walked into my life with your practical ponytail and your complete inability to let me get away with my bullshit, and everything I thought I knew fell apart." "Harrison, let me finish, please." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to do this right. I don't know how to be the man you deserve. But I want to try, if you'll give me the chance." Claire felt her carefully constructed walls crumble completely. "I'm scared." "So am I. What if this doesn't work? What if it does?" She looked at him, this complicated, wounded, sincere man who was trying so hard to be different, and made a choice. She leaned across the console and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of each other. Then Harrison's hand came up to cup her face, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like a promise, like coming home. like the world finally making sense. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling too," she whispered, "and it's terrifying." "Then we'll be terrified together." They drove back to her apartment in comfortable silence, hands clasped between them. When he walked her to her door, Harrison kissed her again. Slower this time, sweeter, with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "Dinner tomorrow?" he asked. "A real date, not me as your employer. Just us." "Just us," Claire agreed. She watched him drive away, then leaned against her door with a smile she couldn't suppress. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "He's a keeper, Claire Bear. Don't screw this up." She laughed, typing back, "I'll try not to." For the first time in years, Claire Dawson let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to have something good, something real, something worth the risk. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill that Harrison had researched obsessively. He'd asked Margaret for advice, called Penelope 3 times, and read online reviews until he'd memorized the menu. When he picked Claire up, he was holding flowers, simple daisies, not expensive roses, and wearing an expression of genuine nervousness that made her fall a little deeper. "You look beautiful," he said, and the honesty in his voice made her glad she'd worn the blue dress Penelope had insisted on buying her. "You look terrified." "I am." He offered his arm. "I haven't been on a first date in... God, I don't even know. 8 years? Then we're both rusty. I think my last date was a disaster involving food poisoning and a guy who spent 3 hours talking about his fantasy football team." Harrison laughed, and the tension broke. "I promise, no fantasy football." The restaurant was intimate and warm, with candles on checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread that made Claire's stomach rumble. They ordered wine and pasta, and talked about everything. Her childhood in a small town in Kansas, his boarding school years, her love of old movies, his complete inability to understand why anyone enjoyed camping. "Let me get this straight," Claire said, gesturing with her wine glass. "You've built a sustainable energy company, but you don't believe in being outside?" "I believe in being outside. I just don't believe in sleeping on the ground when perfectly good beds exist. That's not camping. That's just outdoor poverty." Harrison grinned, and Claire realized she'd never seen him look this relaxed, this present. "Fair point. Maybe you'll convert me someday." "Is that a future tense I hear?" His expression grew serious. "I hope so." The weight of that statement settled between them, heavy with implication. Claire reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm all in, Harrison. Just so you know. I don't do halfway." "Neither do I." They were interrupted by Harrison's phone buzzing insistently. He glanced at it, frowned, and declined the call. It immediately rang again. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's Richard, my CFO. He wouldn't call unless..." He answered with a clipped, "What?" Claire watched his expression shift from annoyed to concerned, to something close to panic. He stood abruptly. "I'll be right there." He ended the call and looked at Claire with genuine distress. "There's a problem at the office. A security breach in one of our data systems. I have to..." "Go," Claire said immediately. "It's okay." "It's not okay. It's our first date, and I'm..." "Harrison." She stood and kissed him quickly. "Go save your company. We'll have other dates." The gratitude in his eyes was almost painful. "Come with me? To your office? I don't want this night to end, and maybe... I know it's not romantic, but I don't want to be apart from you. Is that crazy?" Claire thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "Probably. Let's go." The Blackwell Industries building was a glass tower downtown. and at 11 p.m. it was mostly empty. Harrison's office was on the 32nd floor, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. Richard was already there, along with 2 IT specialists, all of them looking stressed. "Tell me," Harrison said, immediately shifting into CEO mode. Claire watched him work for the next 3 hours, marveling at the transformation. This was Harrison Blackwell the Titan, sharp, decisive, commanding. He asked incisive questions, made decisions without hesitation, and managed the crisis with the kind of controlled intensity that probably showed up in business school textbooks. But every 20 minutes, he'd glance over at her, curled up in the corner of his office couch, and his expression would soften. A private smile just for her. A silent apology in his eyes. A reminder that beneath the CEO was a man who'd brought her to his office because he couldn't bear to say goodnight. By 2 a.m., the crisis was contained. The breach had been stopped, the vulnerability patched, and plans made for a full security audit. Richard and the IT team filtered out, leaving Harrison and Claire alone in his office overlooking Denver's sleeping skyline. "I'm sorry," Harrison said, collapsing onto the couch beside her. "This is officially the worst first date in history." "I don't know. I got to see you in action. That was impressive." "Impressive boring." "No. Impressive competent. Impressive confident. You were kind of sexy when you were being commanding." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Don't let it go to your head." He pulled her closer, and she settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow from crisis mode to something steadier. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights below. "My father built this company," Harrison said quietly. "Started it in a garage in Charleston. By the time he died, it was worth $300 million. I've tripled that in 10 years. And sometimes I wonder if that's all I am. The man who made the company bigger. If there's anything else underneath." Claire tilted her head to look at him. "You're the man who learned to make omelets, who read to a stranger's sick brother about Denver sports teams, even though you don't follow sports, who brought daisies instead of roses because you remembered I said I liked simple things." She touched his face gently. "You're so much more than your company, Harrison. You just forgot for a while." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Make me believe I could be different." "I didn't make you anything. You were always different. You just needed someone to see it." Harrison kissed her then, deep and searching, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he whispered. "Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone." "Okay." They drove back to his house in Cherry Creek as dawn was breaking over the Rockies. Inside, Harrison gave her one of his shirts to sleep in, and they lay together in his bed. Nothing sexual, just 2 people finally allowing themselves to need each other. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Claire said in the darkness. Harrison was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "Sometimes I'm glad Victoria left. Because if she hadn't, I'd never have learned how empty I'd become. I'd have lived my whole life not knowing what I was missing. And now I know. And it's you, Claire. You're what I was missing." She turned in his arms, kissing him softly. "I love you." The words escaped before she could stop them, raw and true. Harrison went very still. "You don't have to say it back," Claire said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I love you too." His voice broke on the words. "God, Claire, I love you so much it terrifies me." They held each other as the sun rose, 2 broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. And for the first time since the altar, that never led to a marriage, Harrison Blackwell felt something other than empty. He felt home. 3 months later, Harrison stood in the same house that had once felt like a fortress and realized it had become a home. Claire's coffee mug sat on the counter next to his. Her books were scattered on tables. Her laughter echoed in rooms that used to hold only silence. She hadn't officially moved in, but her presence had transformed every corner of his carefully controlled world into something warm and alive. It was a Saturday morning in February, and snow was falling softly outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Claire was making breakfast, teaching him again, their rhythm so natural now it felt choreographed, when Penelope called. "Are you sitting down?" his sister asked. "Should I be?" Victoria got married last weekend. Harrison felt Claire go still beside him, her hand pausing mid-stir. He reached over and covered it with his own. Good for her. That's it? Good for her? What else should I say? I hope she's happy. I genuinely do. There was a long pause. Harrison Blackwell. What did you do with my emotionally constipated brother? He fell in love. Turns out it changes things. Claire looked at him with eyes full of emotion, and Harrison pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple while his sister made delighted noises on the phone. After hanging up, Claire turned in his arms. You okay? I'm perfect. And he meant it. Victoria leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me here, to you. That's very romantic for a guy who used to think love was optional. I had a good teacher. They finished breakfast together, moving around each other with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. Later, they drove to Aurora to visit Daniel, who was having a better week. The three of them played cards in the common room, and Harrison lost badly because he kept getting distracted watching Claire laugh at her brother's terrible jokes. On the drive home, Claire was quiet, staring out the window at the snowy landscape. What are you thinking? Harrison asked. That I'm happy. And it scares me because the last time I was happy, everything fell apart. Harrison pulled over at the same scenic overlook where he'd first told her he was falling in love. He turned to face her, taking both her hands. Claire Dawson, I'm not going anywhere. Not when things get hard. Not when Daniel needs more care. Not when you're impossible or stubborn or scared. I'm staying. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Claire's eyes went wide. Harrison, it's not what you think. Open it. Inside was a simple silver key. It's to the house, Harrison said. I know you haven't officially moved in, but I want you to. I want your mess and your music and your terrible taste in reality TV. I want weekend mornings teaching you about spreadsheets and weeknight dinners burning things together. I want all of it, Claire. All of you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. My brother is always welcome. We'll convert the East Wing into a better space for when he can visit. We'll make this a real home, not just a house. Together. Claire launched herself across the console, kissing him with enough force to make him laugh against her mouth. Yes, yes, you ridiculous man. Yes. 2 weeks later, Claire's belongings arrived in boxes that made Harrison's minimalist house look lived in and loved. They spent a weekend arranging furniture, hanging her photographs, arguing good-naturedly about whether his expensive art or her thrift store finds looked better in the living room. They compromised, which Harrison was learning was the foundation of everything good. One evening, they sat together on the couch, her reading, him working on his laptop, in comfortable silence. Harrison looked up and watched Claire, absorbed in her book, her hair falling forward, completely unaware of how beautiful she was. What? She asked, catching him staring. Nothing. Everything. He closed his laptop and pulled her closer. I was just thinking about a year ago, standing in an empty ballroom, convinced my life was over. And now you're stuck with a woman who reorganized your entire kitchen and adopted a cat without asking. Mr. Whiskers was a joint decision. You said absolutely not 5 times. And then you gave me those eyes and I caved. That's basically joint." Claire laughed, snuggling against his chest. "I love you, Harrison Blackwell. I love you too." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For teaching me that feelings aren't weakness. For showing me that love isn't something you negotiate. It's something you surrender to." That's very poetic for a CEO. I had a good teacher. Outside, snow continued to fall on Denver, blanketing the city in quiet white. Inside, Harrison Blackwell held the woman who'd saved him from himself and felt something he'd never expected to feel again. Peace. Not the empty peace of control and isolation, but the rich, complicated peace of being known completely and loved anyway. The altar in Charleston had been the end of one story. But this ordinary, extraordinary moment of being together was the beginning of another. And Harrison knew, with absolute certainty, that this story was one worth telling. Claire shifted in his arms, tilting her head up to kiss him softly. "What are you thinking about?" "Champagne flutes," he said, "and Italian marble, and how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best ones." She understood immediately. "You don't regret it? Any of it?" "Not for a second. Because every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment of pain led me here. To you. To us." He cupped her face in his hands. "You saved my soul, Claire Dawson. You taught me how to feel again. You saved yourself. I just showed you where to look." They held each other as night fell outside, two people who'd been broken and had somehow found each other in the aftermath. The house that had been a fortress was now filled with laughter and mess and love. So much love it spilled into every corner. Mr. Whiskers jumped onto the couch, purring loudly, and Harrison, who'd sworn he'd never have pets, scratched behind the cat's ears while Claire smiled. "This is perfect," she whispered. "It's messy. Same thing." And in that moment, Harrison Blackwell understood what Victoria had meant all those months ago. Feeling wasn't weakness. It was the only thing that made you human. The only thing that made life worth living. He'd been left at an altar by a woman who couldn't marry someone who didn't know how to feel. But he'd been found by a woman who taught him that feeling was the greatest gift of all. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.